They say that love's the international language, and I'm sure it is, but football is the real international language, because you can go anywhere and you can play.
I mean, it's beautiful, just everyone around one ball with air in it. It's a piece of leather, but it just brings everyone together, even if you're from a different area, or even if someone's in a gang and that person's in a gang, they come and play football, and it's just football. So I mean, it's just our release.
And I think it unites everyone, irrespective of what colour you are. Everybody loves soccer. Everyone loves soccer.
I've always been interested in the adventure side of things, in taking chances, taking risks, because the bigger risk you take, the bigger incentive there is at the end. And for me, there was no bigger incentive than to play professional soccer in Europe, because I knew that I had seen it on TV, I'd watched Man United, I'd watched Liverpool, I'd been to Europe, I'd seen games, and I just thought, well, if I can get to the pinnacle of my profession, it's got to be in Europe, it's got to be there, and I got to take that chance.
Every story has a beginning, and Jay started here in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Jay, as a child, he had an older brother to tag around with wherever he went, which was really a blessing in disguise, I think, as we look at what's happened with Jay in his life.
Jay, knowing what his personality was like, I knew that he couldn't sit a lot.
Jay was a wily little thing. He had a lot more energy and a lot less fear than I did. He was kind of the kid that had the weird shaved head and a goofy haircut.
He was always playing with the bigger kids for the most part.
Our first house, we had about 4 or 5 kids that were my age and even a year older. And there were just a couple of guys in the neighborhood my brother's age, Jay's age. So he would a lot of times be playing in our games and kind of play with the big boys.
So he always had a little swagger to him. He had the fancy, blonde hair, nice tan. He was a little stud at a young age.
Growing up in Green Bay, there was one thing that was certain. You loved your football. American football.
America, the land of liberty, home of the brave and the true. We will fight for the right to live fearless and free, proud as the red, white, and blue.
As a kid growing up in Wisconsin Dells, being in Wisconsin, we loved our Packers. We all had the Packer jerseys and helmets. That was Christmas presents. That was a big deal.
From the day you're born, you got Packer clothes on. You're up early Sundays waiting for the game to start. If you're not at the game, then you're definitely watching it either at your house or at your friend's house.
This is a football state, and obviously it's a huge football city, Green Bay.
Football might as well have been a religion in Green Bay. Soccer, not so much.
Every kid in America plays soccer when they're little up until they get to high school, because then they have a choice to make. Then they have a choice, well, what am I going to play football or am I going to play soccer? And a lot of times, especially in Wisconsin, in the place in Midwest where I grew up, you know, it's such a football place, and it's such a football town, and it's such a football state that, you know, that's the popular sport. That's what most people play. If you're a good athlete, or if you have any kind of capabilities to become a really good football player, that's what you do.
We live 6 months out of the year for Green Bay Packers football.
I'll tell you what we do on Sundays.
Oh.
Watch the Packers.
Watch football and drink.
Don't you all just chase the ball or something like that?
Oh, there it goes. Go get it. I run like this. So I don't play soccer. If I ran like this, I would play soccer.
I've just grown up around sports my whole life. My mom was a state champ in track. My dad was a 3-sport athlete in college.
The DeMerit name, there's a lot of lineage even before Jay as far as athletics.
We come from a long line of gym teachers, so we're encouraged to play every sport.
I grew up with track and field. My grandfather was a track coach at Port Washington. My father was a track coach at Wisconsin Dells. My mother was a track coach.
John's whole life has been sports. From the Wisconsin Dells on, when he was a state athlete himself in high school. So now all these track meets, like I mentioned, Jay and Todd were out bouncing around at these meets growing up with it.
Jay had good athletic genes. I also believe that Jay had, other than the natural athleticism, he had that desire to compete.
He despises not coming out on top. And I think that competitive spirit is really important the higher you get in athletics.
It was in his blood, it was in his family, it's what they did, it's what they do.
I actually played football my freshman year in high school. My dad was actually the football coach.
Jay was a multi-sport athlete at school, played soccer, then went to basketball, then track and field. But of course he's a kid that everybody wanted out.
He always went what I would say 110%. And one of his things that I remember is Jay was so coachable. He always wanted, to be the best. If you looked at Jay when I had him as a freshman and sophomore, he was pretty small. Jay, at the time when he was playing, he proved people wrong. It doesn't matter what size you have, so it's the heart.
I was only 15. I still was small, but everyone else is small when they're 15 as well, so I was able to compete. But when I was 16, I decided, well, I was still pretty good at soccer, so I decided, well, I haven't grown again, so I might as well go out and try to play soccer. And
I used them in high school pretty much all over. When I need a strength in a midfielder, I had him play midfielder. When I need a strength in the forward to score a goal, I had him forward. I never had him play in defense because I thought he was too valuable.
He came to Bayport, where I was going to high school, and he was just such a great mentor for me and for all the guys. I mean, talk to any of his ex-players and they'll tell you the same thing. He's got this really calming Italian influence and this really calming kind of grandfather type.
He was outstanding. He made an all-state team and scored a lot of goals, and he won a lot of games for us. But more than anything else, he was a great leader to the rest of the team.
DeMerit, again with a nice centering pass. And this time it's Adam Teremski left alone in front, and he scores.
I was a goal scorer. I think 24, 27 goals or something my senior year in high school.
Number 5, the big scorer. 21 goals this season. Jay DeMerit, a forward. Kurzak gets it up into the air. There's a header, and it's in! Oh, my goodness! You got to say, you haven't seen that happen too many times.
I remember sitting at my last high school game, and we had just finished, and I was on the bus because it was a game we shouldn't have lost, and we wanted to go to the state that year because we had a good enough team to do it, and we lost our last game, and I didn't know if I'd ever play college soccer. I didn't know, I thought my soccer playing days might be over, and I remember sitting on the back of the bus crying, and I remember he came to the back of the bus and he just put his arm around me. He said, "Don't worry." He said, "You're going to go much higher than this."
I was a good friend with the coach at the UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago. So I called him, and he said, "Aldo, if you recommend he has to be a good player.
He was offered a partial scholarship, basically sight unseen.
USC happened to have a design degree, the industrial design degree that I wanted to do as far as my schooling. So it kind of just fit. I got to get out of Green Bay and go try to do the big city thing, which I was excited about.
Jay began his college soccer career in Chicago. During his sophomore year, his coach made an unusual request.
He pulled me aside one day and he said, have you ever played defender before? I said, no, I've never played defender. I said, I've defended, in basketball, and I understand the principles of it. He said, well, can you take him and mark him out the game? Just go wherever he goes. I said, yeah, I've been doing that my whole life in basketball. So all those defensive principles, that mindset you need as a defender to say, I'm going to make your day difficult, I'm not going to let you score, goes straight into defending on a soccer field as well. And I guess those types of things that were already ingrained in me really helped me become a defender maybe quicker than most forwards that will come in and try to do that job.
Jay continued to grow as a player and develop into his role as a defender. During his junior year, Jay helped lead his team to the NCAA tournament. They had a great run, making it further than any other team in UIC soccer history.
By his senior year, he really wanted to be looked at by an MLS soccer team.
After UIC, Jay was working summertime in Chicago, playing with Chicago Fire Reserves, hoping for a break in the soccer thing.
Back in what we call in the United States a PDL, which is like a Division IV professional league. It's like a lower end, and a lot of guys will start there and work their way up through to get to the higher leagues. And Jay, when I met him, was finishing up school at UIC.
He had desires to go on and play. So he was doing an awful lot to help get himself ready.
You start to hear little inklings of, oh yeah, could this player be here? Is the Fire going to take him? Maybe they'll take him on trial. Those types of things. And I was starting to hear little whispers like that, of course, but you don't believe it till you see it.
Jay got looked at here, and at that point they felt they had good enough players, and they decided he wasn't the right time, right place for him.
Jay's hopes of playing in the MLS were slipping away. But he didn't let this failure get in the way of his dreams. While training with the Fire Reserves, Jay would often pick up teammate Kieran Keane, a soccer talent from England.
Jay used to drive around this old beat-up Vitara. Thing was just busted. So he come and picked us up.
Jay decided that his fortune wasn't going to be here in MLS. He's been overlooked. He was kind of disappointed about that because he thought he had played well enough here in the States to catch somebody's eye.
It just kind of came up where all of a sudden he's met these two English kids and he's moving to Europe, and they're going to travel around and try out for soccer teams.
One thing Jay doesn't lack is daring and courage. He wanted to go to Europe and try it there. He wanted to go over there and see where that would take him.
The first thought that comes in your head is, this is a big decision. What are you going to do? Because you're giving up a lot of your life to really go for it. And I'm not really the type of person that is going to do things halfway.
We thought Jay was crazy going to England. Number one, we knew he had very little money to go on.
I just didn't think much of it. I thought it was cool just trying something out. Nobody else around here has tried anything like that before, but I don't know. What did you think?
I thought he was kind of nuts for just getting up and going, but pretty much everything he's ever done is kind of nuts.
At that time in my life, I wasn't done. I wasn't done with my dream of being a professional soccer player, of being a soccer player in general. So I had a decision to make. It was start at that ladder on the first step in America, or start at that ladder on the first step in England or in Europe. And when Kieran first talked to me about it, he said, you should come. We can live with my mom, we'll travel around Europe. You never know what can happen. And he says, ultimately, I trusted him, and I had to, because he was my friend, and I knew that he knew what he was talking about.
I just saw the potential. I know he needed work, but the raw potential was man, he can play.
So for me to actually take that punt, to take that jump into the deep end and go, yeah, let's do it, for me there was only one choice.
When I first came to Europe, I think I had about $1,800.
He came over here looking to play pro football. Believed he was good enough. I never believed it when the first time I saw him. He was so raw, he was very, very green.
Kieran knew what it took. He knew, in looking at me probably, that I hopefully had what it took to make it. And just like anything, you know, it started off as kind of a buddy story. It was, let's go do this together.
We were very nervous. You know, other than these two kids, he didn't know anybody in England. And we were kind of concerned that, you know, what's going to happen? He doesn't have a whole lot of money.
So we got this Euro Atlas, and I remember sitting at his house and sitting online as well, trying to find out what teams would be in the cities we wanted to go to.
We kind of figured, we had this like book, this map, and we would just like look at the map, and then we look online at teams and try and figure out a path of teams that we could just turn up to, go to their training grounds.
In the corner of the Atlas, we had a bunch of numbers because we went on all the club's websites, wrote down the numbers of the club that we could call when we got there, or the address of the training ground that we could just show up at. So we did that. And then we had Henry write us our resume, CV things, handwritten on that Fulham-headed piece of paper.
To cut a long story short, Kieran asked me and pre-arranged if I'd write him some references for the two of them. And going on my history of working for Arsenal and Fulham and my reputation as a scout, Middlesex scout for Arsenal, the least I can do was oblige to try and open a few doors for them. So I wrote them a few references, and even though I even wrote a reference for Jay without seeing Jay play. But Kieran, I trusted his judgment. Kieran was adamant that he was good enough.
And then we got that laminated, and then we were pretty much set. It was basically us with our backpacks, and we were ready to rock.
First, we started off in Amsterdam, and then we went to Rotterdam, and then headed down to Belgium, to Antwerp.
I remember we rented a couple bikes to get there because it was like you couldn't get there, and we couldn't really afford to get taxis everywhere and whatnot. So we rented these two like Dutch bikes, and I remember pulling up into the car park, and there's like Mercedes, there's these cars, and Jay and I like tied our bikes up to this like post in the players' car park.
We went over to the reserve team practice and said, "Hey, is there anyone we can talk to about possibly getting a trial? We've come from England," and probably lied a little bit and said, "Yeah, we've come from Fulham and this and that." But the guy said, "Well, go. There's an office over there. Just knock on the door, and somebody should be there." We said, "Okay." So we went over there, knocked on the door, no answer. Knocked on the door, and then we kind of see the window move, and we're like, "There's somebody in there," and they're just completely ignoring us. So we kind of knock a little bit harder, and nobody comes. Finally, the guy kind of opens up. Then he finally opens the door and says, and we kind of give our spiel and say, "Hi, we're from America, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're here for. These are our CVs. If you want to take a look, you know, we possibly maybe have a trial or something like that." And you could tell he didn't really speak much English, but he spoke enough to kind of say, "Oh, okay, yeah, well, give me 5 minutes." So he kind of looked at our stuff and gave it back to us, and then closed his door again.
So and the guy made us wait for like an hour. So we were waiting there.
So now we're starting to get frustrated because, I mean, like, you could just say no. We're happy to hear no and move on. But we don't hear anything, and so now we're getting mad. So we still have these folders with papers and stuff, and basically what we did, we got a pen out and we wrote, we just wrote like a big "your loss" on one of the back of the copies of the CVs. And we just wrote "your loss," and then like, basically, I slid it under the door, and Kieran came flying in and kicked the door, make a really loud noise. Slid it under the door, and we both just took off on the training ground.
Got another crazy hostel. We were like sharing a room with like 6 dudes, and there was like some crazy looking guy there. There was another guy that looked even more crazy. There was like 6 guys in this small room, and Jay and I had bunk beds, and it was just like, man, what are we doing?
So we moved on and never even made it to Nice to get back to London because we didn't have enough money.
Jay and Kieran returned from their travels with no money and nothing to show for it. They had to stay at Kieran's mother's house in London.
There's my brother Ashley, there's my brother Justin, there's my brother Jordan, my sister Courtney, my mum.
And then we had a dog, Tyler. Tyler was a little terrier ratting around the house, running around on the wood floors, and who ended up actually getting pregnant because they got another dog in, another pit bull called Bruno. So ended up being like 9 of us in the house.
I didn't really want to hear about that stuff, and I know my wife for sure didn't, as far as some of the dire situations that he may or may not have been in.
I didn't know all of the nitty-gritty details because I think he just thought I would get concerned and worry. As a mom, that's what we do.
We know that he was a kind of survivor, and he always has made the most of things, so if he was able to go and he was able to play some soccer, it didn't matter where he was sleeping or what he was doing before or after.
Kieran and I were upstairs in the attic. I lived on a mattress that Kieran had, an extra mattress at his house from one of the many beds in that room. So I slept on the corner of the floor in the attic in my little space. And
yeah, it was only what a 3-bedroom house, I think, and like 20 of us living there.
Yeah. For me, it was like, you know, the Osbournes were popular then, you know, and I had seen kind of what they're like, a bit of hostile, but a bit of love, you know, just fiery people. You know, the mom is, you know, Virginia's from Scotland, so she's just got this great personality about her.
The first thing he opened the door, stood inside, and stood on a dog poop.
Always ripping on people, always has a joke, always has some kind of witty banter going around to make fun of her kids or to make fun of me being an American and stuff like that.
Because I had just had a new puppy, and it had done it at the front door, and Jay put his foot right in it. That was the first thing that poor soul got when he arrived in my house. So then he was one of the family.
My mum used to tell everybody that he was like the 5th son, her American son.
But I was also thankful that he had a roof over his head. And I also knew he didn't have a lot of money to pay anyone, and they were very kind to allow him to stay in a house full of people.
I always go back to the point of how lucky I was to be able to have that situation. You know, I was so fortunate to be there with no money, not a lot of food. They don't have a lot of money, you know, but Virginia brought me in like I was one of her kids.
We kind of thought we'd stay there for like a month at best, and we were going to find a team. But like a month turned into like a year.
In England, the path to becoming a professional footballer starts at an extremely young age.
Kids now, we go right down to 8, 9 years old, which you're allowed to now. The rules used to be 14 years old, but now they're 10 years old. At 16, they're allowed to come on to the staff. They have to continue with their education, but 90% is football. At 17, they're allowed to sign pro, which, if they're good enough, we take them at 17. Some we leave to 18 to make that decision. And then from 18, they go into the reserve side, the second team, and that is the nearest you get. You either go into the Premiership side then, or you fall by the wayside and drop down. Really, really tough. I mean, I think that the percentage of lads that we take in to actually make it in the Premiership is probably less than 1%. If you haven't made it by 1920, then you're not going to make it.
In the eyes of English coaches, Jay and Kieran's chances of making it as professional footballers had already passed.
We came back, immediately started getting trials, but still training every day. We were playing Saturdays and then Sunday pub league, and then Kieran and I would go to this AstroTurf across the street from his house and just kind of run around, train with the little kids that were playing. There'd be pickup games there all the time, and then there'd be kind of league play on certain nights, and Kieran and I would just kind of wander in, say, can we get a game? We'd do some running around, and it had kind of a big park around his house as well, so we'd just do laps around the parks to keep our fitness and do a little bit of distance running and things like that, just to stay fit in case that phone call came of, oh yeah, I know this guy, he'll let you guys come for a trial.
They always used to run.
Just run every day.
I didn't get it myself.
Hours on end, just running and running and running.
We just train. Like, we had no discouragement. Like, if teams said no to us, we would train even harder and we'd train.
The English Football League system is also known as the Football Pyramid. It is a series of interconnected leagues for club football in England. At the very top of the pyramid is the Premier League. It is the most lucrative football league in the world, with an annual revenue of $3 billion. Known as the greatest show on earth, Saturday matches can attract over 400 million viewers worldwide. Below the Premier League is the Championship. Following that are Leagues 1 and 2. These 4 leagues are made up of full-time professional clubs. Below this, the pyramid continues to grow into what are known as non-leagues. In total, there are more than 140 leagues, containing over 480 divisions. Down at the bottom of the pyramid is the Sunday League, also known as the Pub League. At the end of each season, teams at the bottom of their league are relegated, while those at the top are promoted.
There's so many leagues here. There's obviously the 4 professional leagues, and then there's the conference, and then there's about 10 non-leagues. And then even below that is Sunday League. In Sunday League, you don't really get paid. Maybe 1 or 2 guys maybe will get paid to show up on a Sunday morning.
It was funny because Jay was sub the first, second division Sunday League. Jay was the sub.
And Jay was on the subs bench the first bit of the season, which I thought was so funny. Because he was American and the views of European people on Americans, he did already at that low level, he already had a stigma attached to him.
I knew the biggest barrier to entry with Jay would be being American, because I know what our mentality is like in this country. And again, I reiterate that fact. Football or soccer being the 5th sport on the list, and I knew they wouldn't take him seriously.
The whole non-league situation, these guys just play because they love the game, they love the sport, and they just like to get a little bit of a runaround on the weekends. So that's kind of how I got introduced into the culture here. I played for Southall Town. We trained Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. Dennis would come pick us up in his little minivan.
I used to sell ladies' underwear, and I used to pick him up in an old blue van.
He used to pick us up, and it was just a 2-seater, kind of a bench seat in the front, and then the whole cargo load in the back. So you couldn't really fit 3 people in the front. So every time Dennis would come in, he'd have his hand-rolled cigarette in his mouth, and he'd stick his head out the window, "Get in the back, boys."
And I only seated one in the front, and Jay was in the back with all the knickers.
His little hatch, and would shout back and see if Jay was okay, and you just hear this yep, American accent, and then we would shut the hatch and would keep driving.
We'd go to Miles, down to Gloucestershire, down to all over the southwest of England, and he might spend 200 miles in the back with nice knickers.
Well, the eating situation was hilarious, because I think back on it now, and we were just like a bunch of scavengers, none of us really had any money. Virginia, the little money that she would make, of course, would go to the kids.
My mum would give us money to go for to entrust Jay and I to go shopping for the family.
Kieran and I, we each would make 40 pounds on the weekend. So Kieran and I would each take 20 of our own and then give another 20 towards the food. The mom would come up. Virginia would probably come up with about 20 to 40 pounds as well, depending on what the tips and things that she got.
So we'd go shopping, buy the whole week's supply of shopping, and then by Tuesday the food was gone. You know what I mean? So it was every man for himself.
So for the first 2-3 days, from about Monday to Wednesday, we'd all eat like kings. Coming up, coming down, everyone's coming in from their respective jobs or duties, whatever they had to do during the day, and just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And then by Wednesday, all the food would be gone. So me and Kieran are trying to hide spaghetti under our bed and stuff like that. And Jordan's up finding cans of beans underneath his pillow and stuff like that. Just everyone's trying to scavenge just so they can get through the week.
We had some crazy odd jobs. One, we were painting decorators.
Kieran and I would go in early, get the steamer out, and then take all the wallpaper off, and then he'd come in later in the day or the next day when we'd be done, and he would just paint the walls.
Guy gave me this roller, and he said he had it for 15 years, so he goes, be careful. 5 seconds, I broke it.
Kieran broke one of his brushes after about the 3rd day, and he looked at Kieran and he said, I've been using that brush for about 20 years, and I've never even come close to breaking it, and you've managed to break it in 3 days.
It was supposed to be for a month. I think we got fired after a week. The guy all of a sudden called us back and said, yeah, there's no work for us. But we were so bad. We actually got more paint on ourselves than we did on the walls.
So of course we weren't really cut out for that job.
We'd come home, eat, we wouldn't have much to do, and then we'd just go back out and train. We'd try and find pickup games, play against anybody and anybody that we could.
So I used to try to find walls, and it's a lot easier to play kind of these wall games if you have more than one. So I used to come back here and I used to try to find the best wall in the neighborhood and stuff. I used to just, me and my ball used to go kind of walk around. And I remember coming into places like this. You'll see, if you come around, these are just closets and stuff, little storage areas for the people that live in all these houses. And I used to come here, and then I came upon this little area where I could have kind of little walls and angles and stuff. And I used to pretend like these were players. So I used to kind of take the ball and I would like kind of, and then I'd kick around it and then I'd find a new space and I'd kick, you know, kind of against those walls there. So I'd have like my own little game and I'd recreate my own little scenarios.
The boys continue to train and work hard despite their setbacks and lack of income.
So I used to have to get up at 6:45, and a lot of these overground trains, they don't have workers that work there, so you can just jump the barriers. So I used to jump the barriers for free at like 7:30 in the morning, take 3 different trains that were kind of free because they didn't have a lot of workers working on the non-mainline trains. I would take 3 trains instead of 1 because the 3 would be for free instead of me paying nine pounds one way for the other one, the mainline one that would only take 25 minutes. But I actually did an hour and 20-minute journey in the morning just to get to my trial because I didn't have enough money to get there on my own.
Jay and Kieran continued to play for Southall, despite the fact that it was a team stuck at the bottom of the pyramid.
At the end of our season with Southall, we were top of the league, and Kieran and I got a pay rise. I think we're on like 60 pounds a game now. Because they wanted to keep us along. I think we probably threatened them and said we were going to go somewhere else that would give us more money or something like that. Somebody that wanted to poach us. And he said, okay, well, let me see if I can get you more money. He came back with an extra 20 pounds every week. So we're like, yes, money.
And they would promise us this, they'd give us more money, promises, okay, I've got this club looking for you, you know, and that was it. They just kept us tagging along.
Towards the end of that season, we kind of ran out of money, and our chairman didn't have any money and said he couldn't support us anymore. So he said if we got promoted, if we won the league, then he'd get a bonus from the league, and then we'd all get paid back and a little bit of bonus as well. So we all kind of came together, thought, yeah, why not? You know, like we got to play anyway. And all the rest of the guys, again, they're not really doing this for money. They're doing it for fun. So they're like, yeah, no big deal. We'll all just come together and we'll play. So sure enough, that's what we did, and ended up winning the league, and everyone's all happy thinking we're going to get these fat envelopes at the end of the season, and nothing came.
The setbacks continued as Jay and Kieran tried to break in without success.
He had another tryout near the end of the season for a team called Oxford, and so I drove him up there 4 hours. Drove there 4 hours to play in a reserve game. So we get there, suit up, everything. We're both on the subs bench. So we're watching this game, and then they bring us both on in the 87th minute of the game. They bring us both on in the 87th minute of the game. I don't think Jay touched the ball. I think I passed it once, and the referee blew the whistle, and then they said, all right, yeah, we'll call you. And we were just like, man, gotta be kidding me.
Kieran and him were playing on a conference level team, making a little bit of money, scraping by, going to tryout after tryout after tryout.
They went and they trialled here, there and everywhere, here, there, everywhere. And unfortunately, maybe because it was the age thing, maybe because it was the American thing, unfortunately they had so many knockbacks, it was unbelievable.
We're kind of getting more frustrated. We'd been at Southall longer than we wanted to be. We only wanted to be there like 4 or 5 games and bang, go to a team. So like these tryouts and teams would kind of fall through a little bit. Someone would like promise something, empty promises.
I know 99.9% of the other players that I've ever worked with would have given up.
And the reality of the situation is you're going to go to Europe with very little money, with very little opportunity. Now, what happens when or if that doesn't work out?
I just wanted him to have a job, and there were times when he wasn't getting the job, and I thought maybe he should come home.
I knew that he was struggling because he came back after the first year with no money to his name whatsoever.
When he came back and told us about some of his experiences in that first year where he was playing under aliases and trying to hook up tryouts in certain places, and the coach wouldn't show and they'd be waiting at the door and no one would be there, so they'd end up leaving, and it was a waste of time for everybody.
And he was poor, so what do you do next? Do you give up or do you stick it out?
He came back and we pretty much had to support him that summer.
Yeah, I was borrowing money from everybody. Of course I was trying my best to make money myself. It's never, I never just want to take, but You know, of course, when you're in need of things, you know, you go to people that will support you.
In the summers he came home and explained to me, you know, I haven't eaten anything but beans and toast for 6 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, can I take you out for dinner? You know, I had a job.
It was a little bit embarrassing because I didn't really have any stories, any kind of substance as far as what I had. How was Europe? Are you a European soccer player now? And I'd be like, well, to be honest, I played in front of 20 people once.
2 weeks before he went back to England, he was with me in Madison. I was living in Madison at the time, and he asked me if he could borrow $300 to bring with him over to England. And, you know, I didn't have a lot of money at the time either, but I did believe in him, and I knew that he would pay me back when he could afford it.
You know, I think they saw in my eyes that I wasn't done with this yet, and I wanted to go back and keep going.
Jay returned to England, determined to succeed.
At that stage, they were getting lots and lots and lots of rejection. But every time I spoke to the two of them about that rejection, the first thing Jay would say was, don't worry about it, we're going to go again.
Jay progressed from there on, and he progressed with every game.
Jay was playing for Southall, getting a bit of a reputation.
We won the league his last season with the club. We knew he was getting promoted. We didn't want to lose Jay, but we weren't going to hold him back.
And it was just a bit of luck that somebody brought him down from Southall Town here and said, well, I'm going down Northwood, pop down. The very first game he played, I must admit, I was watching the game and everyone was talking about a couple of forwards we had, and I said, who's the centre half? And everyone was saying, what do you mean? I said, that's centre half. This is true. I said, who's the bloody centre half? And they sent you home after the game, didn't they? They told him, don't come in the bar, go straight home. Because everyone was talking about him and they knew that someone would nick him.
We just went there for one game. That was it, one time. We done pre-season with them, a couple of training sessions, and then the Watford game.
When we went, we took more or less a full first team, and we had a guy called Helgeson playing up front, who is probably one of the best players in the air that I've ever worked with. Fantastic leap. Jay played directly against him and was outstanding, absolutely outstanding. We couldn't believe what we were seeing.
We played, I think we lost 2-1, but as a team we gave a good account of ourselves, and they played their first team. So I was testing myself against their two best forwards.
After we played against him in that pre-season friendly against us, I went and asked a couple of the lads, particularly Helgeson, who'd played against him, and he said to me he thought that he was one of the most difficult opponents he's played against. After the game, I spoke to the lad who originally phoned me and said we'd very much like to take him on trial for 2 weeks.
Jay had played in a friendly, he was playing for Northwood, I believe, and he played in a pre-season friendly against Watford, and he obviously impressed them, and they invited him along as a trial game to play Real Zaragoza here at Vicarage Road. No one had ever heard of him, no one knew who he was.
Like, Jay couldn't even afford to buy like new boots. I think his boots like broke out actually in the Northwood game. And he actually couldn't even afford a pair of boots to actually go on trial. So Henry came to the rescue and like gave him some cleats to wear.
We had one high-class pre-season friendly that year, and we had to make a decision on him.
They were playing this team from Spain called, and I didn't even know how to pronounce Zaragoza, but Real Zaragoza. It was totally foreign to me. I was like, where are they from? What's this kind of thing?
So there was a game at the stadium. First team, Real Zaragoza, huge Spanish team. You know, there was no way either of us thought we were going to be involved. You know, we were just going to watch. So Jay brought his camera, take pictures and stuff.
I think most of us were saying, well, you know, we got to take this guy. But we thought, well, let's sling him in at the deep end. You know, they were a top side, so we decided to play him.
I remember he came out and said he went into the locker room and saw his name on the board and he was starting. And he came out, he had his training kit on, and he had this like little disposable camera like hidden in his hand, and he like handed it to me like on the side of the field. And he just said to me, take as many pictures as you can, because I might never be here again. So he started like a bit shady, and I was just like, man, come on Jay, come on Jay, come on Jay. And he came out in the second half. I think he just was like nervous, like, you know, playing for Watford. He came out second half and like just destroyed it.
it convinced us that playing against a real top quality side, he played extremely well. A few rough edges, you know, that we knew we had to tidy up. But basically he played so well that afterwards we just thought, listen, we've got to take this guy. You know, it's too good an opportunity to miss. We all felt that he had a future.
That was it. That was the start of Watford.
I remember Ray Lewington kind of just coming into the locker room and just going, Jay, kind of come over here. So he took me into his office and he said, you know, he said, well done tonight. He said, that was my big test for you. He says, do you have an agent? And I said, yes. But I kind of lied because I didn't really have one. And he goes, well, anyway, he kind of laughed to himself and he said, well, either way, get your representative to call the club in the morning because I want to offer you a 1-year contract.
It's just taken one moment and now you've had that little opening, you know? And I knew that once he had that little opening and got through that little crack, he'd turn it into a chasm.
Yeah, the next day, the coach offered him a contract. That was on the internet, and I remember reading that on the internet. My buddy and I were like, oh my God.
For him to sign a contract, we were so proud of him from such a far distance.
I actually still have the email where he told me, you know, I just had a trial with this team called Watford.
It's like striking gold if you're a gold miner or something like that, or winning the lottery kind of thing. So the odds are so far against it, but Jay was able to be in the right place at the right time and do the right thing.
You have dreams and you have goals and you have a picture of what those might be, and you know, to do it in the way of, say, a trial game and kind of that shining moment, that kind of eureka moment where things just all come together, and that was definitely one of them. That turned out to be about 500 pounds a week, which was heaven to me. You know, I would have done it. I would have done it for free.
He wasn't relegated to eat beans and toast anymore. He could actually have some real food with the amount of money that he was going to make, which was phenomenal. Phenomenal news when we heard that.
I was excited. I was super happy because all the work and all the miles and all the effort that I had put in and the risk had all paid off. But you know, it wasn't done yet because I was only on a 1-year contract. You know, as far as I was concerned, a 1-year contract just like a 1-year trial.
Jay's hard work had finally paid off. He had a new team and a new home, Watford.
My dad supported Watford. He brought me along as a kid, aged about 7. I've supported Watford ever since, and as long as my dad was alive, he came to football with me. Sadly, he's gone now, and I've carried it on, and my son now supports Watford and my daughter. We're all season ticket holders.
Well, Watford, of course, has a major place in my heart.
Watford's part of me. It's in my blood, and it's marked on my skin forever from when I was 17 years old. That's what the Watford Hornet, the old mascot. Traditionally, Watford was a lower league club, spending most of its time in the old 3rd division and sometimes in the 4th division. It changed in the late 70s when a man called Graham Taylor came here. Graham Taylor took us from the lowest bit of professional football, 4th division, right to the 1st division, to a cup final. And he also made it a community club. We were the first club in the country that introduced the family concept. He had it written into the players' contracts, I believe, that they had to not only play football for the football team, but they had to do community work.
You see kids, old people, kids, everyone coming in during these, coming in the gates every game day, and it's just a really nice atmosphere, and it doesn't have that kind of English hooligan feel at all. You know, it does feel like a very special place, and it is. Throughout your career, there's a lot of people that come and go, but the one thing that always stays is the club and the fans and the fan base and what this club represents. And you know, this club is always reminded me kind of home. It's kind of always reminded me of Green Bay because it's a small town club with big fans, big hearts, and kind of a family environment.
After Jay's first year, Watford appointed a new coach, a fiery young Englishman named Aidy Boothroyd. Watford was predicted to finish near the bottom of the league that year, but Aidy had other plans.
My first meeting with the players, I said that I was expecting to be promoted and that I was expecting automatic promotion, and the playoffs were a minimum requirement for that group of players.
So 2-0 Watford, and then young Watford prospect Jay DeMerit put the game beyond doubt. It came a minute after the restart. It's his first senior goal.
Oh, Shivaka didn't look. He's given it to King, and he could have given away the points.
Jay adapted well. He and his team lived up to their manager's expectations, while far surpassing those of others.
Trying to find the space, McNamee needs to deliver low, but in the end the far side, and Henderson finally breaks the deadlock. And it had been coming, and it's Darius Henderson at the far post.
At the end of the season, Jay and his team found themselves in a playoff final against Leeds United. The winner would gain promotion to the greatest show on earth, the English Premier League.
The playoff game is the richest game in the world because now it's worth probably about £70 million. So 90 minutes of football is worth £70 million.
He never asked us to be at games, but that one he really said, I really hope you and Dad and Todd can come.
And we're getting close, and we're seeing all these scarves out of windows. And there's Watford scarves going up this highway, and we get 3/4 of the way to Cardiff, and all of a sudden the main road from the north comes in, and all of a sudden we're seeing blue and white scarves hanging out of windows. And Jay's friend explained to us, well, this is how you show your colours in England.
We had a great drink in the pub before the game, a lot of old friends there. First time any of us had ever been to the Millennium Stadium. We were the underdogs, Leeds, much bigger club, thought they were going to walk it.
We had never seen anything like Cardiff Stadium. We had to go through a tunnel to get to our seats because if we went out the normal route, we'd be walking through the Leeds fans area. So they wanted to avoid any Watford fans from doing that, so they took us to the secret way to get to where the Watford seating was. And we come up in the stadium, and this whole place is bannered, filled with people from, you could just see a sea of white and blue that were the Leeds. And then you pan to the red and the yellow for Watford.
I remember sitting in the tunnel in Leeds in the Millennium Stadium just before we went out. We were making so much noise. And the Leeds guys were just standing there next to us.
Playoff final.
And I'm thinking to myself, going, it's on here. We're gonna win today.
They introduced the teams, and there's fireworks and all this kind of stuff. It's exactly like a Super Bowl would be in the States.
It is a match worth millions of pounds, but it's also a match worth millions of memories. It is Leeds United against Watford for a place in the Premiership.
The game started just like any. We're a bit slow. Teams are just trying to figure each other out.
We kind of seemed like we were outnumbered a little bit as the game started on early. Then Watford earned a corner kick.
And then all of a sudden, a corner kick.
I'm thinking to myself, come on, Jay, get in there. One of you guys get a head on the ball.
I kind of trot up and start my run. And normally I make a near post run. That's normally my run that I'll do on corner kicks. But for some reason, I decided not to make that run. So I kind of faked that I would do that and then came around the back.
And I'm watching this thing unfold, and it's like slow motion that you see this play happen. And I see Jay cut around the man.
Ashley Young whipped in a great cross right to where I was going, and I remember just nothing else mattered. I remember thinking, just look at the ball. And I remember of course, the atmosphere, 70,000 people, there's 22 guys on the pitch, and I don't remember one of them when I saw that ball coming in. And I just remember coming in, looking at the ball and just making sure I hit it square, and I dove in and bang.
Ashley Young delivers. Watford in front. The American makes his mark in the playoff final.
I just remember the thud on my head and just an unbelievable noise coming in. And people say, in those kind of moments, you kind of just black out. And I definitely did. I don't remember. The last thing I remember was the ball hitting my head and feeling that kind of thud as you feel when you head something at a pretty high rate. It just kind of shakes your head a little bit, and I remember feeling that shake. And then the next thing I remember, I was just surrounded by all my teammates, and I was standing up, and I kind of had my head down, and everyone was over me shouting and stuff like that. And that's the next thing I remember. I don't remember celebrating. I don't remember if I said anything. I don't remember what people were saying at me. I just remember this noise, and then all of a sudden I just came to, and it was just all my teammates were crowded around me in the middle of the box.
Watch them on the penalty spot. Now he lets him go. Once he's gone, he can do nothing about him because he's charging in towards the box to put the header in. Leeds don't have anybody on the post. Not that they'd have saved it anyway because he hits this with the meat of his head.
For Jay to score the goal as well was like a dream come true, you know. It had only been a few years earlier that Jay had said, when he first came here and I first met him, that, you know, he was earning good money, which he couldn't believe. And at that time, he actually said to me, he said, I'd have played for the season for nothing.
The place just erupts and there's confetti flying all over. Everybody's jumping and dancing and hugging each other. So Watford's leading 1-0, and here's your kid that scored the goal.
All of us looked at each other, and we all started to cry.
It's like, I looked around and said, is this a dream, or is this true, or what's going on?
We ended up scoring 2 more goals and won 3-0. Again, kept a clean sheet. I think we were one of the first teams to keep the opposition scoreless throughout the whole of the playoffs. So we had a lot to be proud of. After the game, the man of the match ball, they put it in this kind of plastic case. And I remember seeing somebody with a camera in the case walking up to me.
Here's Jay standing down there with this glass-encased ball. It's awarded to the man of the match.
And then they give it to you and they say, you know, well done, man of the match. Can I get a few words? And then you talk right on the field, right after the game in front of the camera.
The second year playing for Watford, and I guess that just comes with the territory. When you have a great effort or a great game, you get the accolades.
And I don't remember what I said, but I just remember just being in disbelief because, you know, that by far is one of the most, probably at this point, probably the most special moment I've had on a football field because, you know, it symbolized everything. The journey, it symbolized my family because they were all there. All the people that supported me were there. I think I had to get like 25 or 30 tickets for that game. You know, the whole Keane family was there. Henry was there. All my old coaches, all my non-league friends, they were all there. My mom, my dad, my brother. And you know, just to have that whole moment and have everyone experience that with me finally was such a special feeling.
The rest of the players, of course, were just thrilled about everything because they had won. They're going to the Premiership. They're going to the promised land, so to speak, in soccer. And having Jay, a big part of that was, as you look back on it, it's just remarkable.
It's what makes this game special. Who would ever have believed this? And who would ever have believed that they could do it? And the memories that the Watford support will take away from them. Not just from today, but from this incredible ride all season. And Watford are into the promised land of English football.
That third year that he was playing for Watford when they were in the Premiership, it was awesome. We went out and got satellite television because they're running the Premiership on Fox Soccer Channel, and then Setanta Sports had games on, so we ended up getting both of those packaged. So almost every week we could watch them play. We didn't have to listen to the radio and kind of imagine what it looked like anymore.
We were going back to what we'd all enjoyed in our youth, you know, when we were much younger on the high days, and it was particularly great for me as a dad now, for my children and everyone, my other mates' children, just to experience that high. And it was very, very special, more so because we really didn't expect it.
I remember sitting on the bus on the way back from the Millennium Stadium, and I remember thinking, now we've really got a problem.
He's rightly famed for, he can try and place it here, and he does! Didier Drogba is back.
Town side. Fabregas joins in. Worth a shot, surely! Oh! Dynamite! Ronaldo calling for it on the far side, but he's gone for it! And how?
Well, I remember when we first got promoted, you know, it doesn't really sink in that you're going to be playing in the best league in the world until probably a couple weeks after we got promoted, because then all of a sudden the press starts to call and then the season fixtures come out and you think that, and you see that, you know, you got Man United in the second game at home, and you're getting excited, and then you're thinking, actually, I'm going to be playing Man United in a few months at home at Vicarage Road. I mean, how cool is that? And then it really starts to hit you that you're going to be playing against the best of the best.
Rooney, Tevez, Ronaldo, wonderful football, capped by an exquisite finish.
At that stage, even then, I was beginning to worry for Jay, because all of a sudden now he's going from Sunday football to semi-pro football to Championship football into the Premiership. So I'm beginning to get scared. I'm thinking, oh my God.
You know, and all of a sudden you find yourself in the tunnel at Man United, at Old Trafford, with this kind of energy.
It kind of hits you in the face when you come out to Old Trafford. 76,000 fans. Watford know they're in the big league and they want to stay in the big league.
And then you look to your right and you're seeing Ronaldo, you're standing next to Ryan Giggs, and you're thinking, well, he's not as tall as I thought he was, you know, stuff like that, which is actually such an intimate level. And you're playing against Drogba, and you're standing next to him, and Frank Lampard's there, and you just see this line full of superstars. And you're like, you know, how am I here? How am I supposed to be here? But I better stop thinking about that now, because those guys are gonna try to make my day very difficult.
And I used to say to Jay, what do you think of this, what do you think of that? And he would just shrug his shoulders, and I'll be looking at him amazed. I say to him, you're not scared? He goes, no, just a job to do.
As far as Mikel, there's DeMerit.
At that time, 3 years earlier, I was watching these guys on TV with all of my pub friends, you know, at pubs or before non-league games and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I'm looking at these guys less than 3 years later, and I'm standing next to them.
You know, a lot of players kind of, because of the media attention and the standard of the league, the Premiership, it can find people out, and you make mistakes and you get punished for them.
They don't feel sorry for people in the Premiership. It's the best league in the world for a reason, and you have to be at your best to stay in that league. Otherwise, you're going straight back down.
It's a lot more intense over there. You know, it's more like a religion, soccer to those guys.
Michael Carrick with a big deflection off the inside of the post. Finish!
Yeah, it's hard because in living and playing in a place like England, where soccer or football is like the main national passion, it's intense, you know, in every way. In games, you know, the pressure's there because they're right on top of you. They want goals, they want blood, they want it all.
You give a Premiership player, especially a world-class player like the Drogbas, like the Frank Lampards, one chance, one opportunity, even if it's in the 93rd minute. They're going to take it, and they're going to beat you. They're going to take your 3 points, and they're going to go home, because that's what champions do.
Chenko, Drogba screaming for it. They've got it! Chelsea have done it! It's Salomon Kalou in stoppage time!
But I think to kind of put it in perspective, Jay DeMerit and Watford at that particular time were sort of a Rocky Balboa coming from nowhere, going on to play and fight against the best in the world.
I remember playing Chelsea here, and Frank Lampard kind of shook his man, and a guy kind of slid in, and I remember I was standing next to Drogba, but I could tell Frank was about to shoot, so I left him and I just came sliding in right at the end, and as he is about to shoot, and I just got my the tip of my toe on it, and it just went past the post, and I remember kind of getting up and Frank kind of patting me on the back and going, "Good tackle," and I remember that, and just what that felt like to have that kind of player say that. And it made me really kind of smile and think, yeah, I guess I'm doing all right.
Put the world on my shoulders, stand tall. Put the world on my shoulders.
Towards Mackay, at least has kept it in. Buatsa across, DeMerit header and a goal. Jay DeMerit scores and puts Watford back in front.
Perfect my flaws, do it for the fans and a round of applause. I used to dream as a child that one day I could make the crowd go wild.
And Watford have taken the lead. Simplicity itself. It's Jay DeMerit.
Championing ever since. I'm more strong than I ever been. They more round than they ever been. But I bet they hear about me, and they never should have doubt me. I was made for this, they can't hold me down. Can't hold me down.
Absolutely brilliant by Jay DeMerit. A back heel, back over his own crossbar. How about that?
I get a phone call from my sister talking about how her kids are just raving about PlayStation or some game like that where Jay is on there. They want to be Jay DeMerit. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, Jay made it.
Basically, like, he lived in my house for 3 years, you know, just like he's saying, getting by, scrimping and scraping and doing trials, and to see him on TV is just unbelievable.
So I knew we had the characteristic, the mental characteristic, and the mental toughness to survive in this jungle that we would call English football.
There was times I was thinking I would go home, and there was times I was thinking, well, maybe I should just go home, and maybe I should just go home and get a job, or maybe I should go do something else. And it was England itself that actually kept me here.
When he finally did get his opportunity, he took it with both hands and never looked back.
Because he's a down-to-earth lad, he's like the rest of us, you know. Watford have always encouraged the players to be who they are, not set themselves on a pedestal, and Jay is, you know, a prime example of someone who's done just that since the day he got here.
Football, unfortunately, there's so many sad stories about. We see it here with kids that come through at 15, 16, 17, they look fantastic. And then either, for some reason, and we can't always put our finger on it, they lose attitude, or they find it difficult, or they find other things that they feel is more important than football, and they take their eye off the ball.
You see guys come in and they're the next best thing, and all of a sudden a year later they've played 0 games, they're injured, and they don't have a contract. And then all of a sudden they're looking for new jobs. They're looking for ways to get their knees fixed because they don't have insurance. Their stability and their idea of what they had or what they were going to be has completely been taken away from them. And it is a reality. Because you see it from time to time. You see so many guys with so much talent come in, and all of a sudden 2 years later you see them out. You see them in the streets in London and you ask what they're doing. And they're playing like pub league, working down at the post office.
To be a footballer, you've got to have ability, obviously, and you've got to have attitude. But you've really got to have that desire to go through it, because there's lots of setbacks on the way.
It is such an unforgiving job, especially over there, because there's so many people that want to play that sport, that want to be the next John Terry. They want to be that guy, and they're willing to do anything to do it. But as quick as you can get there, just as quick you can be taken out.
It's very rarely a smooth ride. You get loads of setbacks, and some players can't get over them setbacks and decide, you know, for one reason or another, come out of the game.
You come into a trial, you got 1 game, 2 games, 15 minutes maybe to make that impression. That one little bit of magic that might spawn something in that coach's mind to say, you know, I like him. This is somebody I'm going to take a chance on. And if you don't get that in that split second, or in that 15 minutes of fame, so to speak, then you're back on that hard road. Sometimes it's not just about talent. You know, it's almost probably more than half just about mental attitude and just about doing the right things at the right time and having the attitude to get better, or to listen to people that, you know, are really deserve to be listened to.
The following season, Jay was declared captain of Watford.
I guess when you first hear about what captains are and playing here and what a captain means to a team, I mean, when I first heard Aidy Boothroyd call me into his office and say, you know, I want you to be my captain, you know, those words I remember them very clearly.
I made him captain because the way that he played the game, I thought would be the way that any team I had played the game. They played with fire, they played with enthusiasm, they played with energy.
And he said, you know, Gav's going to be on his way out. And he says, and I want you to be my captain. And it's not just, you know, he said my captain, you know, like he's my manager and this is going to be our team.
He epitomised what I wanted to do, and he epitomised what I was, which was, you know, thrown in at the deep end, but very, very passionate, very strong, very willing to do anything to succeed, and I thought he'd earned it.
Well, I'm probably the complete opposite to Jay in that I joined Watford when I was 10 years old, so I've been here 17 years now. So I've come up through the academy ranks, sort of got myself into the first team 2021, and I've been in and around the squad ever since.
Yeah, I was
8 when I first came to Watford, so I've been here good few, about 15 years or something.
You know, again, as a captain, I think he's very strong in his opinions, and like, you know, in a good way. He's very kind of, you know, he's very secure in himself as a person, and so he's a good one to talk to. You know, I mean, in terms of life experiences, I mean, the fact you're making this documentary, you know, he's lived a life, you know, and I think if there was anyone I would turn to speak about stuff like that, you know, it would be him.
He's a good leader on and off the pitch. That's one thing that's good about Jay. You know, he doesn't just kind of, you know, leave it at the ground or whatever. And, you know, outside of football, you know, like I said, stuff to unwind and get yourself away from it. That's what he's good at as well, the social side as well.
With regards to him being a captain of Watford, if you speak to the lads in here and a lot of the supporters, they've all hold him in very, very high esteem. He's done a great job with what he's been given, and that's all you can basically say. He's done what he's got to do, and he's the man to do the job.
But to actually wear that armband and to sit in that locker room before the game and have the kit man come up and put your armband on your left arm is such a special feeling. It's kind of like going to war. It's kind of like putting a piece of armor on your arm and going, yeah, let's go to work.
So let's look at the Solskjaer, anticipated by DeMerit.
Jay sort of epitomises everything about Watford. He's solid at the back. He always gives 110%. He goes in for every challenge, 100%. He is quality, isn't he? That's why he's captain of the club, and that's why he's their favourite player.
To wear that armband means a lot, and it means so much to me as well. And to have that role, to try to develop into that role is a challenge, and it is continuing to be a challenge. But again, I always say this, that's what it's all about. That's why we do this. That's why I play the game. Spent 6 years of my life here, and what a special place. The old Vicarage Road will always be close to my heart, and yeah, open arms. Love you, Watford. Love you, England.
Jay was a hero in the eyes of Watford fans. He had captained his team and played in the highest division of professional soccer, but there was still something missing.
And speaking to him on a personal level, on a one-to-one, he said, oh, my next goal is going to be international football. And I said, what do you mean your next goal is going to be international football? Well, I've played in the Championship, I played in the Premiership, so the obvious progression is international football. And I looked at him as if he came from Mars. Because even though he's my good friend, and even though I've seen him go from one jump to one jump to one jump, I always thought that might be a jump too high.
He knows what he can do, but he knows he can always do better somehow. And somehow he's going to find a way to do that, or someone's going to find a way to help him do that.
The first time that I heard about Jay came through some of my Chicago connections. He had played a little bit with the Fire Reserves. I knew some of the people involved there. So there was a little bit of mention of him at that time. But it really took hold when he moved on to England and started working his way up the ladder.
At the age of 27, Jay got his first call-up to play for the national team and represent his country. An achievement that only a few years ago seemed impossible.
At the moment, you're in the top 30 players in the whole of the country of how many 300, 400 million people. You know, it's like when you think about what that means and what that means to put on that shirt and to play against all the rest of the best of the other countries, you know, it really defines what this sport's all about.
And one of the things that I've always enjoyed during the time that I've had a chance to work with Jay is he's fearless. Whether he's playing against a big name forward or not, there's part of him that as he walks out the locker room onto the field, he gives you a little wink and gives you the confidence that I'm ready for it, I'm going to give you everything I have. And that fearless mentality, that really pays off because it spreads itself around the team. It gives teammates confidence that over the course of 90 or 120 minutes, that's a player that you can just count on. And I think that as we had a chance to get to know him better, that's really been the most important thing that he's brought to our team.
Jay and his team qualified for the 2010 World Cup. As the winner of their region, they were invited to participate in a warm-up tournament, known as the Confederations Cup.
The Spain game was so interesting because Spain had a run of, I think, 20-some games where they hadn't lost in a row world, and it was just an amazing string. And the United States was such a huge underdog,
Yeah, as we prepared for Spain, we knew it was a great opportunity for us. We had played against them the previous year in a friendly in Santander. And I think any team that plays against Spain has to come to grips with the fact that Spain's probably going to have the ball more than you are.
We decided that we're going to have the lion's share of possession. You know, that's how Spain plays. That's how Argentina and Brazil play, and the best teams in the world. And they were the best team at the time and had that streak going.
For our central defenders, a big part of the job is just keeping track of Fernando Torres. His movement along the line is always good. He's athletic. But I think we did a good job in all those ways of closing things down in the center.
And so we defended the center of the field. We defended the heart of the goal, you know. And yeah, at times we had to give up the flank. We did that. You know, they whipped balls in all night. We cleared them away. We headed them away. Those guys were throwing their bodies on the line. Carlos and Gooch and Jay in the middle, stepping up and pressuring, getting down and blocking shots. I have, of course, had to make a few saves as any goalkeeper has to do in a big game. And it all just kind of came together.
And just as importantly, we had the confidence that when we had the ball that we were going to make Spain defend, that we were going to find our own way to possess the ball but attack in the right moments.
The thing that always sticks with me was at the end of the game, players just taking their jerseys off and swinging them over their heads like lariats.
On that one night, to be a part of that group, you can say those are my buddies, man. We went out and beat Spain, and you know, that's going to be held up there as a standard.
15 straight matches in which they were victorious over at the hands of the Americans. Reese Davis, Alexi Lalas here. You've said for the last several days that what you were looking for was something to make the American soccer public feel good about going into the World Cup. I don't know if anything could make you feel better than beating the #1 team in the world.
I mean, you got to be proud. You got to look at that and be proud of that 90 minutes, what those guys did. That was a good old-fashioned American soccer team playing the way that they should, with heart. Yeah, Spain's a better team, but not on the day. 2-0, great result, but look at the fight. Look at the fight. Guys throwing their bodies, blocking shots, running all over the place, fighting for each other. You know, that gives me hope. That type of performance gives me hope, especially going into the World Cup next summer. #1 team, I don't even know what to say.
Jay was chosen to represent his country at the 2010 World Cup. Jay's journey to the World Cup was truly one of a kind.
It's finally starting to hit home. You know, the 30-man roster, which was announced, I believe, 2 days ago. And when you finally see your name on that, and ESPN's got it on the list, and you're like, you see your name in there, then you're like, oh, it's really happening. It's finally here.
Everything we're doing today and tomorrow and yesterday is for South Africa, and we can see it. It's there, you know. And so it's a pretty exciting time, particularly for us players, because we see the media and we see the fans and we see what it's really starting to mean to them as well.
And the process for the World Cup is such a long process. I remember when I first came in, you know, I came in this World Cup round, so it's a kind of a 3.5-year process almost. And I remember I came in after the World Cup of 2006, and I didn't really know what it was about. I was just starting to find my team spirit, my feet as far as what the national team is, the inner workings, the guys, getting used to them. And I remember about a year into it, and the World Cup qualifying was just about to start. And we're thinking, World Cup qualifying already? It's like 2.5 years away. And I remember Carlos and Timmy and stuff, we were sitting at the dinner table. I remember them sitting there and going, yeah, dude, believe me, this will be the longest 2.5 years of your life. But, I mean, you get to that World Cup, you get to that kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and you say, it'll be well worth it.
The World Cup is the culmination of a lot of days for every player. It's a dream to get to the World Cup and play for your national team. And I think in Jay's case, when you think about, again, where he started in this process, the idea that now he was going to the World Cup and a player that the United States was counting on, those were just things that he might not have thought about years ago, but when the moment came, he was really prepared, He's the kind of guy to make the most out of those situations.
You know, they talk about the odds of becoming from a college soccer player to becoming a pro, and becoming from a regular soccer player to becoming a pro athlete. And then you think about the few that are privileged to be the 23 best in your nation and representing your country as a whole in the World Cup, and it really kind of puts things into perspective for you.
These moments in life where you can grab a hold of something that may never happen again, be it the Confederations Cup or his first game at Watford or the first time he played at USA down in Texas. This is going to be another one of those firsts.
But to think now that what he's playing now, going to the World Cup, he was second division Sunday League sub.
Isn't it? It is probably surreal.
So, he's going to kill me for that one, isn't it?
You know, you get to this point now, 30-man squad, World Cups in less than a month. This is what it's all about. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
You know, he's played in the best league in the world, and now he's going to go and play in the ultimate for any footballer, to play in a World Cup. You know, you don't get any bigger than that.
It's great that Africa is getting a chance to shine on the world's greatest stage, the FIFA World Cup, because at this time, everybody gets to see the goodness of Africa, the beauty. Everything will be happening here, right here in Africa.
Ground speed, local time at departure, 1:36 a.m. There it is on the map. That's where we are. We're facing that direction.
Here we are. Landing gear down.
The blue balls hailing from
Hello, Johannesburg.
What's up, big man?
That was the fastest 18-hour flight I've ever been on.
It's about 2 hours before kickoff. About to play England in one of the biggest games of our lives. First game of the World Cup.
I'm ready.
How you feeling, mate?
Number 15, Stars and Stripes, baby. He's ready.
We began the World Cup, obviously, with a match that got so much attention for months and months leading into the World Cup, U.S.-England. And we know that England had Wayne Rooney, who had come off such an amazing year for Manchester United. And when we got closer and closer to the game with England, you could just see that there was an excitement level. As much as the spotlight was going to be big, we had players that were really ready for that night. And I think Jay, again, sort of epitomizes that mentality, that he had worked hard throughout his career to get to that moment, and there was going to be nothing that could get in the way of him getting on the field and doing his job for our team. Jay sort of understood that a big part of the responsibility for keeping track of Rooney was going to be on his shoulders. And he made sure that he closed him down quickly, that Rooney was not going to have a game where he could find those little spaces and seams, and that he was going to really have a battle on every play.
After drawing against England, the US team went on to tie Slovenia with a thrilling second-half comeback.
We went back into the locker room and we knew that fight, that comeback had now put us in a great position to advance.
In their last game of the group stage, the US faced Algeria in a must-win situation. Jay and the defence kept Algeria scoreless through 90 minutes. In the final moments, the US had one last chance to win it. The goal was a monumentous occasion for Jay and the rest of the team. A sense of pride was felt throughout the nation.
Yeah, baby!
He lost his temper, he threw his shoe. But it's okay, cause we won the group. He lost his temper. He lost his temper. He lost his temper, he lost his hair. But he scores goals, so we really don't care. He lost his temper. He lost his temper. Main man. And
It was a good feeling knowing that when called upon, every guy was up to the challenge, and Jay was a really big part of that.
Jay and the US team fought hard against Ghana, eventually falling short in extra time. Although disappointed, they had a lot to be proud of and walked away with their heads held high.
When we think of what we were able to do as a group, to a man, I think there was a really good feeling about the way we represented the United States in South Africa.
Looking back, it's sometimes hard to fully realize all that's happened over the years. Some people might say things like this aren't possible. That some kid from a small town in middle America, who never grew up in the system, that never kicked a soccer ball on a full-time basis until he was 24 years old, could play soccer at the highest level in Europe, and one day play in the World Cup. Some people might say that I was lucky, but I don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work and perseverance to achieve your goals. If there are a few things that I could say to kids or to people that might watch this, people all over the world living on farms in the middle of nowhere, living in the projects, in orphanages, or everyday people,
it's that hard work, perseverance, and a relentless belief is all you need to have that dream.
Remember that the poorest person isn't the person that doesn't have a dollar. It's the person who has given up, the person without hope, the person without a dream.